Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Richard Duffy. I am the Acumatica Industry Evangelist, and on behalf of Acumatica and our partners at Logan Consulting, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, which is another one in our industry series where we're really going to be talking about what's happening in the wholesale and distribution industry. Now, we're going to be covering a couple of different topics. So what I'd like to do is just take you through the agenda very, very quickly. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the wholesale and distribution industry, and we're really going to profile what that industry is all about. Just so you can make sure, if, as you're watching today's presentation, that you can say, yep, well, that really does describe the industry that I'm part of, or the industry that I'm interested in. Then we're going to talk a little bit about a forecast for, exactly what's happening in the wholesale and distribution industry. And I'm going to be referring to a number of different studies that we've done and a number of different reports that we have access to, which are up to date as of last quarter. So when you're looking at industry forecasts and industry trends and industry reports, these usually do take around about a quarter to get produced. So as the research is done, it usually then takes, between 2 to 3 months to get that all prepared out. So that's what we're looking at there. We're then going to talk about what some of the trends and opportunities are for organizations who are operating in the wholesale and distribution space. And we're going to drill down and look at that for each of the different key stakeholders, if you like, in that industry. We're going to look at it from the CEO's perspective. We're going to look at it from the CFO's perspective. We're going to look at it from the chief information officer's perspective, and then we're also going to look at it from the line of business owner's perspective. So that's really what we're going to do when we talk about the executive insights and we talk about some of those industry indicators. We're going to then talk about capturing the opportunities that exist inside the wholesale and distribution space. And then we're going to talk about how you leverage technology to drive profitable growth in the wholesale and distribution industry. Then what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce you to Jim Bertler, who is the principal of Logan Consulting, who are the partner for Acumatica, who have sponsored today's presentation. And Jim's going to talk a little bit about who Logan Consulting are and how they can help you take advantage of some of these opportunities, take advantage of some of the trends that we've talked about, and help you leverage solutions like Acumatica to go out and capture those opportunities. So hopefully that agenda aligns with your expectations for today's session. And with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick off the session. An important point to note, we will be running a Q&A at the end of the session. So if you do have any questions at any point in time, in the GoToWebinar user interface, you will find there is a little Q&A pod. So you should feel free at any particular point in time to go ahead and ask your questions, but we'll provide the answers to those questions at the end of today's session. So let's look at the industry. Let's look at wholesale and distribution, and let's look at a couple of the key areas that are important for people. If you think about it, wholesale and distribution companies are really usually wholesale distributors of durable or non-durable goods. And many organizations typically specialize by product. For those of us in the United States, if we're thinking about, some of the bigger examples of organizations that are in this particular field, we have companies like Avnet, who are a big distributor of electronics and information technology. Think about companies like Cisco, and that's SYSCO, not CIC or CISCO, which is, Cisco is the food distributor, versus Cisco, which is the IT equipment company that manufactures and distributes products. So there's a couple of examples of some of those bigger organizations that you might be familiar with, but it's interesting. The wholesale and distribution space is by far and away the biggest industry sector in the United States today. Now, what does the competitive landscape look like? Interestingly, many people in the distribution space, the demand that they are managing is closely linked to their local economic activity. And the profitability of companies such as yours in the wholesale and distribution field really depends on having efficient inventory management and order fulfillment operations. That's one of the reasons why technology is such an important thing for those organizations to be able to leverage. Larger companies have the ability to really supply customers with a wider range of goods and in more markets. But the advantage that smaller distributors have is that they can compete successfully by really focusing on some more specialty areas or providing value-added add-on services. So the interesting thing about the industry in the United States is that it is highly fragmented. As a matter of fact, the 50 largest distributors in the United States generate about 25% of the industry revenue. So drilling back down then to that whole competitive landscape, one of the things that we've seen that's very, very clear is that computer and communications technology have really had a significant impact on the industry. Why? Because they've really been able to drive efficiency of warehouse and distribution operations. And largely because of automation, industry labor productivity has increased more than 30% just in the last 10 years alone. So part of the reason why organizations such as yours really do tend to focus on those technology enablers is because it's really about making sure that you can maximize the available margins. Because one of the things is that it varies, of course, from specific industry to specific industry or specific subset within the wholesale and distribution space. But the majority of organizations do operate on very, very lean margins. So being able to effectively manage all of the processes around the logistics is key. Another key area, of course, is managing the purchasing cycle, managing the purchasing process and how effectively you manage that. So that supply chain effectiveness really is one of those things which many organizations are focusing on. Now, a bit of a threat, I think, that we're hearing people talk about is the fact that supply chain efficiency is allowing some manufacturers and retailers to bypass wholesale distribution organizations and go directly to the end consumer. Manufacturers themselves account for nearly 30% of wholesale trade in the United States, and large retailers like Walmart are even operating their own distribution systems where they take products directly from the producers. So it's fair to say that as you look at the competitive landscape, not only are you competing with other distributors in your field, but there are challenges coming down the pike with organizations wanting to further leverage their capabilities. So let's then talk a little bit about the operations that occur inside an organization. So the major segment of the wholesale sector is really focused on distribution of non-durable goods, which is 55% of the total industry revenue, and durable goods, which is 45% of the industry revenue. So if you think about, what do I mean by non-durable goods? These are things like groceries, petroleum products, and drugs. And the durable goods categories are professional and commercial equipment, motor vehicles and parts, machinery and electrical goods. So there's a fairly diverse range of these products, but one of the things that's very, very clear is the operations that exist inside those organizations are fairly consistent. There are merchandising decisions, purchasing from manufacturers and other different suppliers. There's the process of managing warehouse inventory, product transportation and distribution. And of course, one of the areas where many organizations are now choosing to try to differentiate is the provision of various types of customer services. So if you think about all of these different areas, it's really, really an opportunity for you to step back and look at your organization, look at what it is you're doing, and look at your customer base and think about some of the areas where you can add additional value, because that's really an area where there is a huge opportunity to look at those value-added services as ways of pushing up additional margin opportunities. So as you look at the different sizes of organizations, and we're looking at the operations and technology that exist, There are really two trends that are starting to come forward. We're going to talk about the trends in a little bit more detail shortly when I change slides. But one of the key things that I wanted to talk about is this idea of third-party logistics. This is a scenario where you, as a distributor, you may choose to outsource the entire operation of your warehouse and logistics to a third-party organization. Interestingly, if you look at Amazon.com, now when you think about Amazon.com, what do you think of? Well, many people think of Amazon.com as being really an online superstore. And yes, from a consumer's perspective, that's exactly what they do. But then from a back-end perspective, one of the things that Amazon have been able to do is they've really been able to build a best practice distribution, logistics, and fulfillment model, which is why many organizations today, both large and small, maintain operations utilizing Amazon's front end, but more importantly, also utilizing Amazon's back-end fulfillment and distribution centers and their fulfillment and distribution mechanisms to take their products to market. So that, albeit on a large scale, which I'm not saying you should look at Amazon.com and sort of, consider that as the benchmark for what you could achieve. But certainly there's no reason why you shouldn't aim high, because even companies like Amazon started somewhere. So I think the thing we can take away from the Amazon example is, the fact that they started off in one area and built a specific value-added skill in another area, and really that's become even more important to them as they go forwards. So that's a key area that I think you could look at. Now, when you look at the technology that's being utilized in these organizations, what are the main technology areas? Well, these are transaction-based systems, and these are the kinds of systems similar to what we at Acumatica offer. Now, today's presentation is not going to be talking about Acumatica as a solution. I am going to give you a very, very short introductory demo right near the end of today's presentation, just so you can say, yep, I've seen it, and I'm going to utilize that to tie back to some of these things that we've talked about. But, fundamentally, the key things that people are using those systems for is to really manage that entire inventory process from what we like to talk about from procurement. So that's the point at which they purchase from their supplier through to payment, the point at which they receive payment from the end customer, in this case usually being the retailer or the person who's responsible for selling the product to the final consumer of the product. So there are a whole range of different areas that organizations utilize to leverage that technology to drive competitive advantage. And these are things as diverse as being able to utilize that third-party logistics. So having a third-party logistics provider having a screen that has access into their system. Of course, remote access to the system then becomes very, very important. And web-based solutions are very, very well equipped to address that particular requirement. But it goes right through to things like having what's known as vendor-managed inventory, where you reach an agreement with your suppliers where they are responsible for managing all of your inventory. And that enables you to operate in very much a lean or a just-in-time basis. So you are not tying up all of your working capital in huge amounts of inventory, but you're working closely with your suppliers to make sure that as you are taking purchases from your customers, those suppliers are able to fulfill those. So again, technology becomes an important enabler with some of those different things. And this is where you see people starting to talk about solutions like warehouse management systems. So I try to avoid three-letter acronyms when I present, but you might hear me occasionally talk about a WMS. And when I say WMS, that stands for Warehouse Management System. And that's basically the system that the people use to do the pick, pack, and ship functions in your organization. Also, they handle the receiving and put away. And those warehouse management systems can be as very, very simple so that they just involve printing out a picking slip and giving somebody a routing flow to tell them where to go, which bin location they can find the goods, right up to the most incredibly complex solutions, which even use very complex algorithms to look at previous inventory usage and then decide what is the most effective way to lay out the warehouse, what is the most effective way to put product into your bins based on previous transaction flows and previous picking histories and those kinds of things. So there's a whole range of different options that organizations have. So let's then talk about the industry forecast. And a lot of this data I've actually pulled from a couple of recent reports. One of them, which was put together by the American Institute of Certified Practicing Accountants, and another one that was put together by a couple of different US government departments. And it really paints a great picture of what the future holds for people in the wholesale and distribution space, because we're basically seeing an uptake or an uptick, if you like, in end customer purchasing activities. So consumer sentiment, consumer confidence is on the increase. And we're really seeing that the fact that wholesale and distribution is tied to that local economic activity, that really does reflect out in what we're seeing happening in the industry. So demand, as I mentioned, is tied to that local economic activity. And so one of the things that's critical is there is a need to do that efficient inventory management and look at different ways of value adding. But of course, the risk, and I've touched on this briefly already, is the fact that there is a risk that larger retailers are going to go ahead and they're going to start to buy directly from producers and try and minimize that middle step that wholesale distribution companies provide, so that they can maximize their margins at the retail point of sale. And for those producers, those manufacturers, many of them as well are looking at that as being an advantage, because there's one less company, one less organization in the supply chain that they have to manage. So again, they're looking at, how does that help them stay competitive, and how does it also help them, increase their margins? So let's then talk about that industry trend for just a second. What we're really seeing over the last, 10 years, is we've seen a very interesting trend. And the line that you're seeing as we look at this first graph up in the top right-hand corner, the first line you're seeing is the yellow line. That is the US market sales trend. And then you'll see the US wholesale sales trend is in the blue bars. So you can see very, very clearly how closely those things are linked together. Another area that I think is interesting is if you look at this whole imports versus exports trend, and you'll see that there has been from 2011 through to February 2014, there's really been an interesting trend where the net exports from the United States as a market has increased and has well and truly moved into a positive territory. So, there are really great opportunities, I think, that exist right now for looking at overseas markets and looking at that whole export opportunity from the United States. Now, the output of the US industry, the US wholesale industry, is forecast to grow at an annual compounded rate of 5% between 2014 and 2018. And that's based on some data taken from that AICPA report that I was referring to, which was published in February 2014. So what does that mean? That means that there are opportunities out there for organizations to really grow. So there are 4 key trends that are driving this. The first one is that general industry revenue growth. And we've seen in wholesale and distribution a 55% growth versus other industries over the last 10 years. We're also starting to see, and it's a combination of factors. It's a combination of just general labor productivity enhancements, but it also includes usage of technology. We're seeing that between 2001 and 2011, there's been a labour productivity increase of 30%. There's also been consolidation in the industry, and again, as a wholesale distributor, you might have seen this even in your field. Maybe you're focused on, perishable food products, or maybe you're focused on fast-moving consumer goods, or maybe you're focused on information technology distribution. One of the things that's clear is that there is continuing to be industry consolidation. And it's not just in the wholesale and distribution space where this is occurring. It's also occurring across a variety of different industries, including professional services. But what that means is that we are now in a situation where there are, 5,000 distributors who are generating revenues above $100 million. And that basically means those distributors, the higher the revenues, the greater purchasing power and the greater influence they have over the industry and over the purchasing patterns that occur in the industry, and also the sales patterns that occur with producers of products. And the final thing I would say is that even though exports have increased significantly, one of the trends that we are certainly seeing is for wholesale distributors to start doing a lot more importing from international suppliers. So between 2006 and 2011, for example, imports grew by 15%. And so what are people doing? What they're doing is there's an increasing number of distributors who are choosing to establish overseas buying offices. Now this tends to be really more tied to larger organizations, larger distributors, because the process of establishing and maintaining an overseas office, as some of you will be aware, is not an inexpensive process. So you really do have to have significant trade volumes with that country in order to justify it. But we're also seeing, for those organizations who deal with countries like China, we're seeing the increasing reliance on and use of buyer's agents. So, there are people their entire business in China, for example, is really focused on acting as your agent with the producers and manufacturers in China to make sure that, all of the quality standards are maintained, and then to facilitate the entire ordering and shipping processes that occur to get the product from the exporter into the United States. So, those are really the four key trends. But interestingly, as I said, it really is basically pointing to the fact that there is a bright future ahead. And the retail trade sector is now the strongest sector, and wholesale trade is showing the most improvement. That was really an overall comment that came out of the AICPA Business and Industry Economic Outlook Survey that was done in Q3 of 2013. And that outlook has not gotten any gloomier, I'll put it that way. In fact, the outlook has gotten brighter. So what does that mean? There's a bright future ahead, but you always, I think, have to be thinking about, well, what are the opportunities that exist? How do I make sure that I increase as a wholesale distributor? How do I increase my market share? How do I increase, my attractiveness to the customers that I have who are currently buying from me, customers who may be buying from a competitor? And more importantly, how do I make sure that my services are so compelling and so important and add enough value so that my customers don't go looking elsewhere to try and establish their own distribution facilities or to go to a third-party organization? And there's really three key areas that I wanted to focus on briefly and talk about. Now, I already touched on one, which is the area of logistics services. And I talked about this in the context of what Amazon.com were doing. Again, not to try and paint a picture and use them as the benchmark, because they are such a huge organization. But, if you think about what they've been able to do, they've been able to parlay their experience in that whole distribution and fulfillment into a whole new area of business. And they've really been able to look at taking that and adding significant additional margins into their organization as a result of that. So then look at your own organization. Do you have the capability to go out to other organizations, other companies in your market? Now, these can be other companies. Let's say, for example, you are focused on information technology distribution. Are there other organizations who could benefit from having access to your customer base? Are there opportunities for you to further monetize the customer base that you have, and then act as an agent and take on additional products? But then, do you take on those additional products as a sales agent, or do you just take on those additional products and provide logistics services? Only you will know which of those opportunities is the right one. But I think it's clear that many organizations today are thinking about these areas. So if you are the CEO of the company and you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, where am I going to find the next growth opportunity for my organization? I would encourage you to look seriously at this particular aspect. Of course, this assumes that you have best practices in place that help you drive effective logistics services, so that, you know, when you go out and you offer that to another company and they come in and they want to do their due diligence on your capabilities, of course, you have to be able to shine in that area so that they will choose to potentially stop doing that themselves and utilize your organization. The second area to think about is the whole area of internet sales. And many organizations, just as the end customer, the end retailer, is looking at bypassing you as a wholesale distribution organization, many wholesale distribution organizations right now are then saying, okay, how do we take advantage of the internet and start leveraging the capabilities that we have to reach out directly to the end consumer? And how do we potentially rebrand or establish a completely separate line of business to go after that market? Now, of course, you will know this better than anybody. The danger with establishing this kind of business is that you can run the risk of alienating your existing customers, because the last thing many of them want to do, because they're already facing significant competitive pressures, the last thing they want to do is be competing with their supplier. So it's a very, very important thing to think about strategically and look at what are some of the other factors which are going to impact on or be impacted by your decision to go down this path. But again, some of the things that I personally have seen with I've worked with more than 450 wholesale distribution companies around the world. But one of the things I've seen is they've actually offered the ability to provide those internet sales facilities to their end customers. So what do I mean by that? They basically set up a branded storefront for the end customer who traditionally buys from them and then resells to an end consumer. So they offer that branded internet storefront and then allow straight through processing services. So customer comes online, they think they're dealing with company A, when in fact it's actually company B that's providing the product, providing the services, and all they do is company B then passes through the margin to company A, less the processing and handling fees and margins and so on and so forth. So there's some really great benefits in doing that. More and more people today are using the internet as their primary purchasing channel. So I would encourage you, look at that in your industry. Is that something which you can do? But of course, when you start looking down that path, then technology becomes a really, really critical component of that. And I'm pleased to say that at Acumatica, we do have a solution that enables you to facilitate that entire process. And then, of course, there's the processing services, the value-added processing services that are linked to both the internet sales, as an example, and the logistics services. So if you think about logistics services, this is like the third-party logistics where you're offering your warehousing and distribution capabilities to other organizations. But then the processing services is a little bit like where you become a sales agent, where You might have organizations who want to establish a presence in the market, but they don't want to go through the entire process of setting up a sales office. This is particularly relevant for companies who are trying to break into the US market, which is obviously a very lucrative market, but a market that requires significant resource to enter into. Well, what you can do is you can parlay your resources into being a sales agent or a sales office for those kinds of organizations. But again, this is really predicated on your ability to offer best practices. If you're struggling with your current system, with your current processes to fulfill your own business, then it's highly unlikely that you're going to be able to do a great job of handling this capability for other organizations. But it's an opportunity for improvement. And that's really what I think people are thinking about now. So if you say, all right, I've done my research and I think this is an area of opportunity, then obviously there are some very specific things you can do to start gearing up and preparing for that. And this is where both Acumatica and our partners can help you with this process. And partners like Logan Consulting can come in and work with you and take their experience in helping other organizations just like yours go through some of these processes, and you can learn from their experience and you share the benefits of those best practices that they have that they can share with you. So then if we think about the executive insight and the focus for different people. So, we have the what we call the C-suite. These are your CEOs, your CFOs, your CIOs. These are the chief executive, chief financial, and chief information officers. And then you have your sales and marketing line of business people. And there are very, very specific areas for these folks to focus on. But when we then start to look at the technology, some of the key things that people need to factor in as they go and they look at what are the solutions that they're looking at, how do they leverage technology, what does the technology need to look like? I think fundamentally there are a number of key areas, and these aren't aligned necessarily under each of these job roles, but it just works out that that's how the slide kind of lays out. But really, there's a couple of key things that people are looking for when they're looking at the technology to drive those transaction systems. Well, that really, from a CEO's perspective, if you think about it, one of the key areas is that they want to have intuitive controls in the business, because really one of the key things that CEOs and CFOs want is they want to be able to take control of the organization, take control of the business, and have visibility into what's going on, because you cannot have control of your organization unless you have visibility into what's going on in the back end. So, having a solution that delivers intuitive controls, it's easy to use. It uses a series of dashboards which display key performance indicators that, give you the ability to access from any device anywhere, that can generate reports quickly. That's really, really critical. Then as a CFO, if you're thinking about, well, what are the solutions that I need to have in place? And what do they need to do? Well, they really need to be able to fit to your business. You really don't want to be in a situation where you're trying to change your business model or change your business processes to match the technology or match the solutions that you're putting in place. So it really needs to be about meeting your unique needs and allowing you to play to your strengths. And that's really one of the things that we focused on at Acumatica. Now, one of the other things that you also want to do is you want to make sure that there is a rich community, if you like, of solutions that you can plug in or add on to your technology, whether it's solutions that enable you to manage the warehouse management process, so that WMS solution I was talking about, or it could be simple things like managing radio frequency identification tags or RFID. It could be utilizing, complex picking and packing solutions as well. So you want to make sure that whatever the solutions are that you put in place have the capability to do that and have that extensible platform. And one of the things that we believe is very, very important is to build on top of the Microsoft .NET platform. Why? because it's the most commonly used development environment in the world. So when you think about being able to play to your strengths, which is being able to respond quickly to industry needs, that customization capability is critical. Now, I've talked about the fact that there is a trend in the industry right now where it is trending upwards. But unfortunately, we know, particularly those of you who've been in the industry for a long time, that most industries and wholesale distribution tends to be cyclical. So it's no different to many other industries. So what does that mean? Well, it means you need to be able to scale up quickly, but at the same time, when business slows down, you need to scale down. And this is an area where being able to utilize on-demand solutions is really, really beneficial. So being able to pay only for what you're using for as long as you need it, and then to be able to, reduce your consumption becomes really important. And this is where this idea of utility computing, where computing becomes just like utilizing your power or your telephone, where you only pay for what you use. This becomes really, really important. Being able to have a couple of different options, being able to use subscription licenses where you just effectively rent the software or rent the solution that you're utilizing, or being able to purchase the license. Now, there's a couple of specific things which we do at Acumatica based on the feedback we've received from our customers, which is things like being able to add users for free. And that really helps you do longer term planning because there's no guesswork, because there's no hidden fees behind utilizing the software. And then, of course, from a CIO's perspective, one of the things I think is critical is being able to keep your data where you want. To be able to take advantage of some of these new technologies like the internet and being able to utilize, both the public cloud, the public internet, as well as being able to utilize the capability to have private clouds as well, and then being able to switch between both. So, there's a couple of areas to look at from a technology perspective, depending on where you're coming from inside the organization. So with that, what I'd like to do is quickly dive in and give you a quick snapshot of Acumatica as a solution and show you an example of what we offer as our solution to help you address some of these challenges. Now, I'm not going to take you through a really deep dive into the Acumatica solution because Jim and his team at Logan Consulting will certainly be able to do that if you want to go in and look specifically at the different functional areas and look at how well the solution can map specifically to your company. But what I would like to do is give you a quick snapshot, so at least you can say, "Yep, I've seen the solution." So with that in mind, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to toggle across now into my ERP solution. And ERP, as you are probably aware, stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to maximize my screen here. And one of the things that you'll notice as I am maximizing my screen is that with Acumatica, it does take advantage of all the available screen real estate that you have. So I'm going to go back because I want to take you through right from the very first step where you go ahead and you log into the system. So I'm going to log out, and then that'll bring us back to our login screen. So when you think about technology and you think about, how do you make sure that you're taking advantage of the very latest technology? It's very, very clear that everybody has now moved towards utilizing the internet every single day. And there are good reasons for doing that. So with Acumatica, it's a 100% web-based solution. What does that mean? Well, it means that you can deploy the main server anywhere you want. Now, you can put it on-premise, so you can have it sitting on a server inside your organization. You can have it hosted anywhere you like in a data center anywhere in the world, depending on what your preference is. And that's what we call utilizing the private cloud, where you decide where you want it and you are the only organization that has access to that server. Or you can utilize what we call the public cloud, and you can use our software as a service model. And what's this about? This is really about giving you the ability to share securely, of course, the resources with other organizations. So what does that mean? That drives down the total overall cost of having access to a system. So then the main user interface that you have when you're operating with the Acumatica solution is your web browser. And what does that mean? That basically means as long as you have access to a web browser, you can access your solution. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and log in. Now, I'm going to take you through a couple of things, and I'm going to show you some things that you might be looking at, and you might be thinking, well, gee, I don't want everybody inside my organization to have access to that functionality. Bear in mind, I'm going to log in as the administrator, so I am the super user and I have access to everything. But the great thing about Acumatica is, of course, that you can lock down the functionality right down to very, very specific screens. So people only have access to the functionality you want them to have access to. Now, Acumatica also has the ability to handle multiple companies. So what you're seeing here is I have the ability to choose which of these companies, which of these data sets I want to work with. And of course, you can switch this off. So if you might have, 50 different companies that people could log into, for example, but this particular user only has access to one. So then you can set it up so that you don't even give them a choice. They don't even see that. As soon as they hit the login button, it just automatically takes them into their specific screen. So Acumatica is 100% role-based. What do I mean by role-based? Well, you can group all of the functionality that a person needs to have based on what it is that they do inside the organization. And you can make the main kickoff point for that person what we call a dashboard. Now in Acumatica, you can create as many different dashboards as you want. And the great thing about Acumatica is it's very, very easy for you to create new dashboards. I may get the opportunity to show that to you in today's presentation, but again, if we don't get the time to do that, I will point you to some additional resources at the end of today's session where you can go and view that. But you can see, here's a few examples of some dashboards. So for right now, I have a sales dashboard that I can select, one click. And then if I'm a salesperson, you can see it gives me some of these key pieces of information. Who are my top 10 customers? What does my sales history look like? And as I hover over each one of those periods, you can see it's showing me that value. So these are examples of graphical representations. And then I have other things like what we call grid-based representations of my data. So I can see all the opportunities that I'm working on. I can see all the individual sales leads that I have, which might not yet have turned into an opportunity. But you have the ability to determine how all of this works. The great thing about the dashboards as well is that you can also add the ability to go to specific functions. Now in Acumatica, you'll see there is a traditional menu system, right? Across the top, you have each of our different product suites, finance, distribution, and then you have the system configuration options and system management options. But then underneath each one of those, for example, in the organization area, you can see I can click here and choose customer management. And when I'm in customer management, it then exposes out a bunch of additional functionality. So for example, right now under customer management, I can go in here and I can choose to enter leads. But I can also add that functionality in here into my dashboard. So what does that mean? If you're working with a smaller screen size, you can hide that entire menuing system, move it across to the side. That maximizes out this screen space. But the great thing is, as my screen resizes, for example, and I start to change this around, so imagine I'm using a different screen size. So I'm using, for example, an iPad or an iPhone. As I'm accessing my functionality, for example, when I go in and I'm entering sales leads, as the screen size changes, this data entry screen automatically resizes for that different screen size. So I can go from operating on an iPhone where everything is laid out for me across a vertical dimension. But then as my screen size increases, maybe I move to an iPad, the screen automatically then resizes, or I access the same screen on a full computer and I get even more information. Of course, you get to a point where there's only so much you can show on the screen, and then all of this becomes wasted space. But it isn't necessarily wasted space, because you have the ability to customize all of these screens, and you can add additional functionality in here to display additional information utilizing this screen real estate. But of course, you always design with the primary screen in mind. So if most of your people are going to be using iPads with a particular screen, if you're going to have your salespeople out on the road and they're going to be using an iPad or an Android tablet to do all their data entry work, then you really probably wouldn't want to make it much bigger than this size that it currently is. Okay? So hopefully that helps you understand that whole process. Now, when you're working with Acumatica, the great thing about the solution is it's very, very easy to use and very, very easy to learn. So being able to navigate throughout the system is very, very simple. And you'll see we have nice big buttons. So if I'm driving the system with a mouse or I'm using a touch screen, it's very easy to navigate around inside the system. Lookups are very simple. Again, anywhere where I can see that I have a magnifying glass, that means that there is a lookup sitting behind it. And as I resize that lookup screen, you can see that I have the ability to maximize with one click the underlying information that's sitting behind that. So again, adjusting for all these different screen sizes becomes very, very easy. So there's my lookup screen, and I have the ability to do that. And there are search capabilities right throughout the entire system. Anywhere you see this little filter, you can filter down what you're looking at. And then you can save that filter. So for example, let's say I'm a salesperson and I'm only interested in customers in a particular state. Then what I'm able to do is I can go in here and I can add a row, and I can say, look, only show me those customers where, you know, the phone number starts with a particular area code, or the state is equal to a particular value. All right. And then I can go one step further. If, for example, that information is not shown on this screen, all I need to do is I can go across here and I can click on this little column select button. It brings up the additional columns for me, and it gives me the ability to choose the columns that I want to see in that information. And if it's the column that I want to see isn't there, I can even change the underlying data set that gets pulled in that I'm selecting from here. So again, the key to this is customization, but not necessarily customization by writing code, but being able to tailor the system very, very quickly and easily to what your requirements are. Let's quickly dive in and look into our distribution suite, because that's a key area that, of course, you're very, very interested in. And we have a rich set of standard functionality available out of the box that links things like customer relationship management and Salesforce automation right through to the entire purchasing process. So you can see in here under distribution, I have my inventory, my sales orders, and purchase requisitions. So let's look at sales orders, for example. So if I click here on sales orders, you'll see in my menu, I have the ability to enter my sales orders, enter shipments, invoices, payments, and applications. So all of these things sit in an area called the work area. I then have processes that I can do. So the processes are, common recurring batch style activities that I might want to do, like processing my orders in bulk, processing my shipments in bulk, turning a whole range of orders into invoices, printing and emailing those order confirmations out to customers, creating transfer orders for moving inventory from one warehouse to another. I then have my reports tab, and you'll see there are a number of very detailed reports that you have that you can generate that comes out of the box. And then just in case you're wondering what this little option is, this is where you go and do your configuration, but we're not going to get into that. That's part of setting up all of the business processes and workflows which sit behind the system. So the reason why I wanted to show you this is, again, this is consistent everywhere throughout the system. So if I move into inventory, I can see there's my work area. There's my processes, including things like doing my physical counts, doing my replenishments. There is my reports, again, accessible the same way. Accessing all of the standard reports are available, like inventory balances, historical inventory, inventory evaluations, and so on. But again, don't forget, when I'm in the middle of doing data entry work, let's say I'm in sales orders and I want to focus purely on what I'm doing, for example, entering a sales order, so I'll choose the sales order. With one tap of my finger or a click of the mouse, I can move that information across to the side here. And then you will see I have the ability to drill down and take advantage of the maximum screen size that's available for me. So that's an example of a report. Let's go back in here and I want to enter a sales order. So again, same scenario. I choose enter sales order, and then when that screen is there, I minimize my menu down and away I go. So I enter in my sales order. I put in all my header information. What kind of sales order is it? Who is the customer? Any additional information? Does it relate to a specific project? And then once I've done that and I've got my customer selected, I'll just do one really, really quickly. Then I can go in and I can start entering the products. So I just simply click on here and say add row. I can pick a warehouse, or I can use the standard warehouse that is set up for this customer. And then, of course, I have all of my products available that I can start choosing from. So I just simply choose the products that I'm selling, put in the quantities, and away I go. Now, you can make this screen as simple or as complex as you want. All right? And again, as I mentioned before, let's take a look at that resizing capability. As I resize, you'll see that the screen automatically redraws so you can fit according to the device size that you're looking at. So that's just a quick snapshot of the Acumatica solution. And let's dive back in and let's finish off our presentation. And then I'm going to hand over to Jim, and he's going to talk a little bit about Logan Consulting and how they can help you. So the product is very, very comprehensive with Acumatica. We have a deep set of functionality, but again, today's focus was really talking about the industry. But you'll have the opportunity to talk with Jim and his team about the Acumatica product and how you can utilize all these different suites to help you take advantage of some of those industry trends and some of those opportunities that we talked about. There are a number of different scenarios that we can utilize, and one of the great things about Acumatica is you'll see I have this supply chain scenario. One last thing that I did want to show you that I hadn't showed you before is if I go in to my dashboards, you are able to take a scenario like that, like your supply chain. I'm going to leave this page because I don't want to save that order. And you can map that even inside Acumatica. And then to execute this functionality, all you need to do is go ahead and single click on that function, and it takes you straight into the related transaction in Acumatica. So, we have this capability. And one thing that a lot of people don't know is I could even trigger it from here inside my PowerPoint presentation. So I could set this up so that when I click on this little graphic here, it will open up the same screen in Acumatica. So if you think about Acumatica, what are we really all about? We're really about being here to change the world of business and to help you unlock your business potential. We're focused on continuously innovating with our ERP technology, creating a best-in-class technology platform, and really disrupting the industry with unique business models and the way that we help our customers, the way we price our product and we go to market. But it's really focused on three key areas: helping you take control of your business, helping you play to your strengths, and importantly, helping you empower your customers. So with that, what I'd like to do is introduce Jim, and Jim will talk a little bit about Logan Consulting, what they do, and how you can engage with them to take the next step and look at how Acumatica and Logan Consulting can help you take advantage of some of these industry trends and opportunities. Jim, let me pass across to you.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. Great insights into the market, and thanks for showing us Acumatica. Just a little bit of background on Logan Consulting. We are an Acumatica partner. We have been implementing ERP systems since 1992 when we started, so we have been at it for quite a while. We do have quite a bit of expertise in the wholesale distribution market. I've worked with a number of firms, both large and small in the wholesale distribution market. And the key differentiators for us are taking a top-down business process approach to the implementation. So when we're going through a process and working with our clients, we're really trying to understand their business process and then how the solution is able to support it, as opposed to the other way around. So we really ensure that we have a great tool in place like Acumatica, but it's there to support a business process, and we want to understand and document that process, which is another key thing for us in terms of methodology. We have a very defined methodology and approach that we use to implementing projects and systems, and so we follow that same methodology every time. We've been using it since we started in '92. Literally been used on hundreds of implementations, and so a proven approach and a proven methodology to implementing a solution. Such just a little background on Logan Consulting and who we are and what we do.
Fantastic.
I'll pass it back over to you.
Thanks, Jim. So again, I think one of the key things to think about is this whole idea of leveraging best practices and leveraging experience. And certainly by working with Logan Consulting, you'll have the capability to do that. So the next steps, and unfortunately, we have run out of time for our Q&A. But I guess one of the interesting things here is that, there are a couple of questions actually coming in. So why don't we quickly I'll quickly address some of those questions for you. People are asking, what's the next step that they need to take? Well, the next step is to reach out to Jim at Logan Consulting, and you can see on the screen right now Jim's contact details and the phone number there. Another person's asked, will today's presentation be recorded and will it be made available? And the short answer to that is yes. In about 15 to 20 minutes after today's presentation, it will be made available and we will share the URL. But of course, you can contact Jim and ask him to share with you the link where you can come back and watch today's presentation if there are other people in your organization who are interested in taking a look. A question here, you talked about your unique pricing model. Yep, okay, yeah, we talked about our unique pricing model. What is that? So one of the things that makes Acumatica very, very unique, if you think about enterprise resource planning software, enterprise resource planning is really about making sure that everybody in the organization has access to the functionality. Now, the big challenge with that is most enterprise resource planning software providers make that very, very difficult. Why? Because they charge you a license fee for every single person who's accessing the software. Well, with Acumatica, we don't do that. You have an unlimited number of users who have access to the system. So if you want to give your suppliers the ability to come online and manage inventory for you through that supplier vendor managed inventory, you can do that. Doesn't cost you anything extra. If you want customers to be able to come online and manage their own accounts, you can do that. It doesn't cost anything extra. And the great thing about Acumatica is it includes portal functionality, which you can switch on, that then allows those people, when you create a username and password for them, it allows them to log on directly and they can only access the areas that are specific to them. All right. So again, all of that functionality is provided out of the box and is provided with security built in. Another question, can we utilize Microsoft Excel for reporting and budgeting? Short answer, yes. I didn't get to the point of showing you that functionality. But again, if you take a look out on the web and do a little bit of a search for Acumatica, you'll find there's a number of different demonstrations showing that functionality. But of course, I would encourage you to reach out to Jim and his team, and they can take you through a more detailed demonstration of the Acumatica solution and show you how quick and easy it is to integrate Acumatica with the Microsoft Office tools like Excel. So I think that's pretty much it. So with that in mind, I'd like to once again say thank you to you on behalf of all of us at Acumatica and on behalf of Jim and his team at Logan Consulting. I'd like to say thank you to you for joining today's presentation. We look forward to having the opportunity to work with you, and we look forward to having the opportunity to help you unlock your business potential with Acumatica. So with that, I would say thank you and have a great day.